Well, here's really the central question. If I don't like the cake, then why am I trying to recreate it? You know what I mean? Oh wow, I didn't know that this was the shape that they were in. I'm stuck. What do I do? It's gonna fall. I'm gonna go for something where I like the flavor, I like the cake, because why would I want to recreate the thing I don't really like to begin with? Hi everyone, we're back. Today I'm tackling zebra cakes. Not something I've actually ever eaten or really know what it is. My God, you guys, they have stripes on both. Oh, thank God. I was about to be really annoyed. I'm really excited because I think I'm gonna nail it without really knowing what the components are. Based on the picture and knowing that this is similar to like the Christmas tree cakes, is that what they're called? Mm-hmm. I think it's basically like store-bought snack food version of a petit four, like a little layered glazed cake. And I love that in theory, and I know how to make that, so I feel like I can do this.
And you never had these growing up, you just saw friends eating them.
I never had these growing up, I never saw friends eating them, but this apparently is a common thing to have at your house, I've been told. I definitely was familiar with other Little Debbie treats, but just not zebra cakes in particular. But I do like the way that they look on the box. Right off the bat, I love the size and like overall proportions of it. I love that it's like a little 4-bite piece of cake. Very, very pleasing as far as like picking it up and eating it. They're like little hexagons, which I didn't know and I wasn't really anticipating. So I can obviously see the cake through the white coating a little bit, but I'm gonna slice through and get a cross section so I can really see what the components are. It's the smell of like a packaged, like a Twinkie or any other like packaged cake. And I guess it's kind of like artificial vanilla smell, possibly like preservative smell. I mean, they look really cute. I do love the size, but basically what I have here, 2 layers of a kind of yellow cake separated by a layer of some kind of filling or frosting, and then that white waxy looking glaze, and then the zebra stripes. What's I think notable about the cake, and is probably actually good in the case of like this type of application, is that the crumb is incredibly tight. There's like no big air pockets in here. It's really, really tight, but also super tender. Like just crumbs fall off. That's something I'm gonna have to think about. I couldn't, when I recreate this, I couldn't make a cake that has like big open crumb. Wouldn't work. I feel like my body's already rejecting it. The coating is like so waxy, so sugary. Oh my God, do you ever have that feeling when your back teeth literally tingle because it's so sugary? That's the sensation I just got. I took such a small bite that really I mostly got the like glaze. All right, cake, kind of dry, very tender, almost instant dissolution, like it dissolved almost. There wasn't even really anything there to like chew, basically flavorless. The filling is this kind of like cream filling, which is C-R-E-M-E, because like they can't actually call it cream because it's not dairy, is very whipped, intensely sweet, fake vanilla. That's about it. I do get a little bit of chocolate when I eat it. I'm gonna try to taste just the zebra stripe. Extremely subtle cocoa flavor, extremely. Very, very, very sweet. Not terribly impressed with the components, but like most snack foods that people remember eating, it is kind of all about the like combination of the components. And I think honestly, with anything like this, I think it's about texture and the kind of like breaking through that glaze with your teeth into that like interior. Flavor-wise, I don't really ever want to eat it again. From end to end, we're looking at about 6 centimeters. I'll go the other way, more like 5.5. Close enough, we'll call it 5.5 or 6. The sides are about 3 centimeters each. The overall height, including the glaze, is just under 2.5 centimeters. And then each layer is around 7 millimeters. I'm gonna take a look at the ingredients. I think it's gonna be great. It's kind of a long list. Sugar, corn syrup, enriched bleached flour, parentheses, wheat flour, niacin, reduced iron, thiamine mononitrate, vitamin B1, riboflavin, vitamin B2, folic acid, close parentheses, water, palm and palm kernel oil, palm and soybean oils with TBHQ and citric acid to protect flavor, dextrose, soybean oil, contains 2% or less of each of the following: dried egg whites, cornstarch, whey, parentheses, milk, leavening, parentheses, baking soda, sodium aluminum phosphate, cocoa, salt, mono and diglycerides, sorbitan, monostearate, soy lecithin, sorbic acid, parentheses, to preserve freshness, titanium dioxide, polysorbate 60, natural and artificial flavors, polysorbate 80, annatto extract, turmeric extract, soy flour. That's a long list. I have to process this. So I feel like a lot of times you learn from the like 2% or less list because it kind of tells you like what they're going for. So the idea that there's egg white in this tells me that that's like the coating, like it's like a royal icing or something. There's just so little that's actually in here. Mostly what I think the glaze or coating is like those oil, the palm oils, basically. Palm and palm kernel oil, palm and soybean oils. The annatto extract and turmeric extract are definitely there for color in the cake, I'm guessing, because that's the only part that has any color to it. There is cocoa, so that's partly in the stripe, but mostly there's just a lot of stuff in here that I don't want to eat. Now, in terms of the cake, I'm thinking that I'm going to go with an oil-based cake. So I think I'm going to make a chiffon, but I'm going to have to make some adjustments because I want to achieve something with that extremely tight crumb. After I bake the cake, I want to make the filling, fill and stack, cut out hexagons, glaze. And step 6, chocolate stripes. All right, so I'm gonna get the oven on. This is gonna be such a thin layer of cake that I think I wanna bake it a little bit lower than I normally would. So I'm gonna get it on 325 and then I'm gonna grab my ingredients for the chiffon cake. I got a cream of tartar in here somewhere. Here we go. So the cake is yellow. Usually you would see that and think butter cake, but what's great about chiffon cake is it has both yolks and egg whites. So the yolks are gonna take care of the color. I'm gonna go with this recipe, my chiffon sponge cake recipe. So I'm gonna start by mixing my dry ingredients. 90 grams cake flour. This recipe uses baking powder and soda. I am going to decrease those amounts slightly. The less baking powder, the less sort of like, chemical reaction and gas production as it bakes. 3/4 of a teaspoon kosher salt. 3. So that's my dry mix. Set this off to the side. So I need 3 large eggs separated. I'm gonna do whites in here, yolks in the smaller bowl. A 1/2 cup of sugar. I need a 1/4 cup of oil and a 1/4 cup buttermilk. Then a little hit of vanilla. Call that a teaspoon. And 1/8 of a teaspoon cream of tartar. So cream of tartar is an acid. This is used for stabilizing egg whites. So now I'm gonna make my yolk mixture. So I'm gonna mix my yolks, about half of the sugar, in this bowl until they're pale and thick. Then I'm gonna stream in the oil and buttermilk and vanilla. The rest of the sugar is gonna go with my egg whites. Probably could use a bigger bowl, but oh well. So now I'm gonna stream in my oil and buttermilk and vanilla. That's really my liquid mixture. I'm just gonna scrape in all of that buttermilk. And now I'm going to combine my wet and dry. So I'm going to pour in my wet. And I'll mix this until it's smooth. So this is my batter base. And now the next and kind of final step is beating my egg whites. So I want to clean off these beaters really well because if there's any fat on the beaters, it won't whip up the egg whites. Often you'll see instructions for like a sponge cake say when you're beating the egg whites, gradually add the sugar. And that's great, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually add all of the sugar at once because if you add the sugar all at once and then whip it, you get a finer foam. So you get smaller air bubbles. And that's what's going to help me get a slightly tighter crumb with fewer like big open air bubbles. So all of this is going to go in. My cream and tartar is going to go in because this is going to help stabilize the foam that I create, basically the suspension of air bubbles, in with my egg whites. So I'm going to continue to whip these until I get nice firm peaks. It'll take a minute or two. So you see how it's like holding the trail? I'm almost there. I don't really want to overbeat egg whites because it will make it hard to incorporate them, but these are nice firm peaks. See the little like beaks off the tip of the beaters and how they're standing straight up. That's firm. So now I'm going to scrape my egg whites into my batter over here and fold them in.
Can you go the other way around?
Yeah,
Just
I could.
for camera reasons.
Yeah, I can do that. So I'm actually going to scrape this yolk mixture into my egg whites. The reason I can do that is because both of them are very light in texture, so they'll incorporate together evenly. So you can see it makes this beautiful, like super fluffy, light batter. I'm going to scrape this out onto my sheet tray. I need to get this in a really thin layer. I think maybe it's enough batter that I can go all the way to all four sides. I think I might have to even remove some batter. We'll see. Going for such a thin layer, 0.7 centimeters / I guess just 7 millimeters. One thing that's going to happen with sponge cake, because I've created this foam, you get this kind of like sticky, because it's kind of like meringue-like layer on top that gets really brown, and I'm going to peel that off because it tastes eggy and it gets sticky and it's just not the best. I know it's not as even as it could be, but I think it's all right. I'm going to grab my cake tester.
I don't think it's cooked.
No, it's not. I know. Testing not the cake doneness, but the thickness. All right, so the thickness of the layer is, we're already at 1 centimeter. So I might want to take away some batter.
Wouldn't you need to remove like half? Because it's going to puff a little bit, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure how much it's going to collapse at the same time. I kind of think that how it goes in is how it's going to be when it comes out, but we'll see. All right, so one thing I want to do before I put it in the oven is I'm going to give it a nice sharp tap on the counter. I gotta get this into the oven. This is gonna bake really fast because it's so thin. So I'll check it in, like, I'll literally look at it in 5 minutes and see how it looks. I just want it to be, I want it to be just barely set. Like, I don't even really want much color on it. Thanks, Archie. So the 5-minute timer just went off. Ooh, it's so close. I think it just needs 1 more minute. Sorry. Now I really think it's done. It is just barely golden on the surface. So when I press on it, it springs back lightly. So I know it's cooked. My feeling from looking at it is that it does seem maybe a little thick, especially in the middle. I'm gonna grab my cake tester. Oh yeah. Much thicker. I can try to like trim it basically. The very edges where it's much more brown are gonna be a little too done. So I'm gonna actually just trim the sponge. Do this while it's hot. I mean, that crumb looks really good. It's really small, but nice and really fine, even crumb. Not lots of big air bubbles. So that looks good. Why am I eating this? I really want to eat it.
What's your review?
Tastes good. So do you see how there's this like sticky film on the surface? I'm gonna peel it off just like that. It's really fun. Look at it. Look at how fun it is. Actually, now it's exposing the crumb. You can see larger air bubbles, but oh well. The bottom is cool to the touch. Let me get a closer look. You can see how flexible it is. Basically, the thickness is just really uneven all the way around. And part of the reason is that the sheet tray itself is not really perfectly flat, and I didn't really spread it very flat. This part is extra thin and extra crispy. Trim that. I'm really happy with the crumb. I'm just cutting it into small enough sizes that I could really look at it. It's like, so this is the thickest end, this is the thinnest end. It's kind of too thin at the thin part and too thick at the thick part. So let's see what I want to do here. At the thickest part, I'm at basically 1.5 centimeters, and at the thinnest, I'm at about 0.5 centimeters. Can I cut and level the layer? I do have these straws, these plastic straws, which are about 7 millimeters thick. So these can be my guides. And I'm making like super fine sawing motion because I don't want to just like tear up the whole cake, which I kind of am. See that? I'm trying to use a blade that I know is sharper but not serrated, but maybe that's actually good because the bigger teeth in the serrated knife are maybe tearing up the cake. So kind of seems like this is working. So my goal is to get a 12 centimeter length of cake that is the correct thickness because I can cut 2 hexagons from each pair. That kind of worked. This way, ooh, I'm right at 6. Here I have a nice even cake layer, good hole structure, tastes good, super light. It's gonna be good. It's gonna make such a good zebra cake. So I'm going to repeat that leveling process with my remaining pieces of cake and hopefully get 8 like equal size, equal thickness strips that I can stack into then 4 stacks and then cut my cakes from there. It really does feel like I'm portioning fish because it's like
Little fillets.
yeah. I'm actually thinking that I'm gonna freeze it because the cake is really delicate and now I just trimmed it. So now there's like still kind of loose crumb on the surface and the cake is really thin and delicate. And I think that when I go to apply the filling to it, there's a good chance that it could kind of tear and I might have a hard time spreading it. So I'm gonna freeze it, get it kind of solid. And that's gonna make it easier for me to stack and trim and cut the hexagons. So I'm gonna do that, clean up, and then I'm gonna make the filling. I think I'm overthinking the filling. I basically wanna make a buttercream. I want it to be buttercream, like it has to be a fat-based, you know, some type of filling. And buttercream is light and airy, and it's not gonna like disappear or absorb into the cake. I know that for a fact. So I think that's the way to go. So I'm gonna make what to me is kind of a go-to buttercream, which is a Swiss meringue buttercream. I'm using a recipe I've used before, also a Stella Parks recipe that's on Serious Eats. I'm just gonna modify it a little bit and cut it in half because I don't need such a large quantity. So I'm gonna start with 10 ounces of butter. And I want this is cold butter. I want it to be room temp, so I'm gonna do my best to soften but not melt it in the fridge.
That's a lot of butter.
Yeah, it is a lot of butter. You can't really reduce the quantities that much because like you need a certain volume in the stand mixer for it to whip. So I will have leftover buttercream, I'm positive, and I'll just freeze it for another use. I need sugar. I need 3 ounces of egg whites. So I need to save the yolks. These are big. Cream of tartar, vanilla, butter. That's kind of it. All right, I think it's good. That was successful. The kind of like classic step for making Swiss meringue buttercream is combining the egg whites and the sugar and whisking them in a double boiler. So there with some like basically barely simmering water underneath until the sugar is dissolved and you get this like liquid sticky mess. So I'm gonna set up my double boiler, yes, so I can get all that like dissolving. I have my sugar in my mixing bowl. I'm gonna add maybe like a half teaspoon of kosher salt. Then I'm gonna add a little bit of cream of tartar, just sort of like a pinch, that stabilizing acid. And now I'm gonna add my egg whites. Often, I used to do this with a whisk, but I think Stella Parks talks about like just, it's actually somewhat more effective to use a flexible spatula. You get more friction against the sides of the bowl. And all I want to do here is warm this mixture to the point where the sugar is dissolved. So if it's grit-free, then you know it's fully dissolved. So I'm just gonna put a little tiny dab. No, a little gritty. So I have to go a little longer. Well, now it's like super liquid, and I can tell like I'm not getting any sandiness when I rub the spatula against the side. So I'm gonna do a little test, tiny little dab. It's perfectly smooth. And now I want to whip this until I have this like beautiful, glossy, dense, super voluminous meringue. And I need it to be basically room temperature or cool to the touch, basically. And that's because I can't add butter to something hot because it'll just melt. So I want to create like this light, fluffy emulsion. So I'm going to start it on kind of medium and then increase the speed. The mixer's been going for several minutes. You can see I have, the meringue is like balled up inside the whisk. That's one of the ways you know you have a really stiff meringue. See how it's all inside the whisk? Firm peaks. So now I'm going to start adding the butter. And with buttercream, you truly have to trust the process. It's very common in making buttercream that your butter might be a little cold or your meringue might be a little warm. And you end up with something that looks soupy or like curdled. But just keep beating. I promise it will work. So I'm going to start by adding the butter a piece at a time. Just kind of throwing it in there. And I still have the whisk. I might switch to the paddle part of the way through. So once that first piece is fully incorporated, I'm going to keep adding. It's starting to regain that volume. More butter. Okay, so I added all the butter. I do want to give the bowl a really thorough scrape because I'm sure there's lots of butter trapped around the sides. But you can see the texture. It's like incredibly smooth and silky, but also light. So there's white and then yellow. So that's meringue that didn't really incorporate. So I want to get all that mixed together. So I'm going to throw this back in the mixer. And then of course I have to add the flavoring, which is my vanilla. Swiss meringue buttercream is incredible texture-wise, but if you leave it plain, it basically just tastes like butter, which to me I don't love. It's just like too rich, which is why I love adding like coffee or chocolate to it because that bitterness helps to temper everything. But here we're just going straight vanilla, which means I'm going to add a lot. So I'm going to add like a full tablespoon of vanilla paste. So that's going to go in. I'm just going to eyeball it. And I already added salt, so that kind of seasons everything. All right, so back in. This is my finished buttercream. I'm going to taste it. It would be a lot to eat this on like a whole piece of cake, but as a thin layer of filling inside the little sandwich petit four that we're making, it's going to be so good. I was thinking about a plan for getting the filling into the cake because the cake is quite delicate, which is why I froze it. But I also want to have a way of ensuring not just an even layer, but uniform layers between all the pieces that I have. So I think I'm going to pipe it with a pastry tip. And I have one in particular that I'll show you. I have one like this. This is actually used for doing a basket weave pattern, but it basically lays out like a thin, even, wide slab of frosting, and it's going to be pretty thin, but I'm going to, if I can do 2 layers. So basically I can like pipe neat, even rows of the frosting across the cake, make little sandwiches. It'll be really uniform. With buttercream, you can't actually incorporate too much air, and then it gives you a texture that is just so filled with air bubbles that you can't really smooth it over a cake and get that like perfect finish. But I'm not using it as a frosting, I'm using it as a filling, and I want it to be really light, so I did whip it quite a bit. So it is very, very fluffy. See when I drag my spatula through it, that you see little air bubbles? That's good as a filling. If you want to avoid that while you're making frosting for a cake, use the paddle rather than the whisk when you beat it in the butter. I want to do a little bit of a test strip to gauge how many layers of frosting I'll need using this pastry tip. So maybe I'll do it on my cutting board, or I can just do it right on here. So I'm going to do it basket weave up. I was basically thinking I would do like a layer basket weave up and then a second layer basket weave down. Does that get me the thickness that I'm wanting? I feel like it kind of does. Let's measure it. I think, and I can't be super accurate, but I think that's pretty close. So I think that double layer, and I can apply light pressure with the top layer of cake just to make sure they fuse and I don't have any like air bubbles in it. or in between like the two basket weave textures, but pretty good. I'm gonna go with that. One happy accident is I didn't really take into account like the width of the pastry tip and the width of my cake, but it's like 3 perfect rows.
Would you want to go to the zebra cake factory?
Sure. Now the really fun part, I'm gonna put the sandwiches together. This one here, I wanna really be careful about lining up the edges. Gentle pressure. Now, same thing with this piece. Oh no, look what happened. So the buttercream got cold from the cold cake, and then it came off. Press, 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 get everything adhered. I might have to trim them on all sides, meaning if they're 6 centimeters at the widest, they're gonna have to be a little bit smaller because I do want to shave off a little bit from every side. I'm gonna make a stencil because uniformity is important in this project. So I'm gonna use my ruler to make, I'll make maybe 2 hexagons. And I got just like a little piece of cardboard off of a package that we got. A little bit smaller than the cake itself, but that is to account for the knife going on the outside of the stencil plus the coating. I'm gonna make another one just as a backup. And this one's gonna be nice because I get to have plenty of trim on all 6 sides. So I'm just using my serrated knife really gently. Before I continue to cut, I'm gonna get some hot water and a towel so I can clean off the knife in between cuts so I don't get it dirty. So I'm at like 2.4 centimeters. No, sorry. I totally understand why sponge cake is called sponge cake, because the whole point is it soaks up flavors, but like any other word but sponge would really be more appealing.
What would you name it?
I don't have like an alternative. Did you find the zebra cakes at Walmart?
What about zingers? Zingers would be good. What about Star Crunch? Cookies with caramel and crisp rice.
See how there's like little teeth marks still from the buttercream? So if I see any of those little marks on the finished hexagons, I'll smooth them.
Shouldn't it all be covered with a glaze though?
Yeah, but I think the smoother all the surfaces are going into the glaze, the smoother they'll look when they're covered. Like, you think the glaze is going to cover the imperfections, and really the glaze just highlights it. It's like putting on heavy foundation and bad lighting. Here you have like little texture in the buttercream from where the 2 layers didn't totally adhere. So I'm just giving it like a super quick, smooth, but that was really the only little spot. I'm really happy with the proportions, the layers, the dimensions, how straight the sides are. Then they look really neat, and that's good because the neater they are now, the neater they're gonna look when they're glazed. And before I turn to the glaze, I actually wanna put these in the fridge because I want the buttercream to actually get a little bit cold so that when I glaze it, it's just like they feel a little sturdier. Now I wanna look up a recipe for poured fondant. There's a recipe that I've used in the past from King Arthur. I'm gonna look that one up. So I'm grabbing some confectioner sugar, some vanilla extract, not paste, because I don't want any specks. I need white chocolate, I need light corn syrup. I'll grab salt, although it doesn't call for it. Just a pinch. And now I need white chocolate. Let me get my double boiler back out, even though I just put it away, and start melting this on the stove. White chocolate melts so easily, so it'll melt really quickly. Oh, I need light corn syrup. This might be exactly the amount that we need. Oh my God, please have enough. Please have enough. Please have enough. Might be like 1 tablespoon short, which is fine. So now I'm gonna weigh out my confectioner sugar, about 1 pound, 454 grams. I think that is 1 pound. So actually my white chocolate is fully melted, and I just have the stove on like the lowest setting. So it's just staying warm. You don't want to overheat. So like a lot of glazes, poured fondant is basically all powdered sugar. It's just what it is. So it's gonna be extremely sweet, but the goal is to not put a thick layer. Now I need 1/4 cup of hot tap water. Oh, I can add to this actually just a little bit of salt. Pinch, not measuring. So I have my whisk into the center of my powdered sugar. I just made like a little well. I'm gonna add my corn syrup. Just gives it a little landing spot. I'm gonna add my hot water. I do need a spatula for this. I'm going to just whisk this starting in the center until the whole thing is smooth. You can also add just a dash of vanilla extract. This seems kind of thick, but we'll see. Cat. I can always thin it with more water. Okay, so now the next step in the recipe is I'm gonna bring over my white chocolate. I'm actually gonna bring the whole double boiler over because this is gonna help me keep the fondant warm. It's more workable when it's warm. So now I'm just gonna add the white chocolate to my powdered sugar mixture. Okay. So now I'm gonna whisk this in. It seems kind of grainy. I'm gonna get this over the double boiler. It's like, did the chocolate seize? This is not what this is supposed to look like. Add the melted coating to the sugar mixture, then add the vanilla and the coloring if you're using it. If the mixture is too thick to pour, reheat it briefly over low heat. Oh, and stir in 1 to 3 tablespoons water. Let me get some warm water. Just needed a little water to loosen up. To me, this is still thick, so I'm gonna add another little tablespoon of water. Oh, I hope I didn't thin it out too much. Oh no. Okay. It has this nice pourable texture. I want to check the consistency. Make sure it's not too thin, not too thick. Let me grab one of those scrap pieces of cake. I'm just going to kind of coat it and see what happens. Here's a good piece to use as a test. Oh God, that was going to fall. So this technique is like in chocolate making called enrobing, where you are totally covering something in a coating. I think the coverage actually seems pretty decent. What do you think? It has to dry, obviously.
I think it looks pretty good. Pretty close.
It looks pretty good. Okay, see how the bottoms are coated? I want to coat the bottoms first, actually, before I end up enrobing. And like let that part set. Coated. And then fondant side down.
We'll just let them dry facing up and then flip them over.
If they have to drain it all, like I want them to pool downward rather than dripping down the sides, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like this and that.
Will they be stuck?
No, the parchment won't stick. I'm gonna pop this in the fridge or maybe even the freezer real fast so that that bottom layer hardens. Because it has the white chocolate in it, it should harden, I think. Let's get into enrobing. I'm gonna see, I think I'm gonna leave the petit four in the freezer and take them out one by one and enrobe them. I found this big fork that I can kind of use like an enrobing fork to suspend the cake, and then I'm going to use this to like cover it. No, it is true that I probably should have let it set more. The fondant isn't really set in that bottom layer, and you know what? I don't know if it's really gonna work at all. It's so stuck to the parchment.
We'll just let them dry facing up and then flip them over.
Will they be stuck?
No, the parchment won't stick. I think I know what I have to do. I think I did it backwards. I think I have to enrobe them first, then do the bot. No, that doesn't work either. Oh, this is annoying. Okay, really? Is that how I have to do it? Let this dry? Okay, fine. That's what we're gonna have to do. Starting over. So it was a mistake to put them fondant side down on the parchment, and I need to, they're stuck. What do I do? Just really carefully slide them off. Don't worry, the cats are fine. I promise they're playing.
Is it really all coming off?
Some of it like absorbed into the cake, which I don't think is a bad thing. Some of it is staying on the parchment. This process does make a lot more sense than the way I was doing it. And now that I have them coated side up, they do need to dry. I'm gonna put them in the fridge to dry. Once they're dry and set, then I'm gonna turn them over and enrobe them so I can get the other side that's bare and all 6 of the hexagon sides. And I'm gonna place them on this rack. They're gonna drip down into the tray so any excess can fall off, and then I'll have every single side coated. I'm gonna grab the tray. The fondant isn't exactly getting the like hard coating I was hoping for, but maybe it just needs more time. But let's just see. No, they're not white. They're a little on the yellowish side. Oh, you know, I mean, it's hard.
Keep it going if you
It's
need
a tiny bit tacky. Will it stick to the fork? Yeah, that seems like it will.
Turn the AC on.
Yeah, maybe
Get
it will.
dry.
Yeah. It's like semi-shiny. It should be more matte. So I just gonna let it. Just gonna let it continue to dry.
Verdict?
I can try one and see if it comes off. It's so tacky. Is it the white chocolate? I just don't understand. Why is it not drying faster? That one's pretty dry. This is truly how most mistakes happen. So you just say, it'll probably be fine. But I'm really getting tired of waiting for these to dry. So the fondant layer is dry to the touch, but if you were to press, it's like still a little tacky. So here's the plan. Very gently place this. So by placing it on the fork this way, the fork isn't really in contact with most of the area of that bottom layer. So time to enrobe. Can you guys tell me if there's any bare spots on those sides?
In the corners.
There.
Oh yeah, corner. A little bit right here. Not bad with the enrobing. I'm gonna repeat that process, and actually, before I just do all the rest, I'm gonna turn the AC back on because I want some air circulation so that these actually dry.
Do you think that's how they did it at the factory, like a gravity-fed?
I'm sure there's like a conveyor belt with like a,
Like just a sheet pouring.
you guys, that one fell in, yeah. Not the worst that can happen though. Gave me a head start.
Missing a corner.
Thank you.
Would you consider doing another layer?
No, I would not consider doing another layer. It doesn't need it.
Would you enjoy designing food factories?
No, I don't think so. I think they look great. Do they look like they came out of a factory? Definitely not, but they didn't. So I want to let these dry, and while they're drying, actually they don't have to be 100% dry for when I do the chocolate. One more step, chocolate stripes. So I'm thinking for the chocolate stripes, I'm not gonna do just like, I guess I could add cocoa to the fondant, but that's gonna be really sweet. I'm thinking I'm just gonna do melted chocolate. So I'm melting chocolate. I need a small amount and I'm all out of bowls. I'm just doing it in the microwave. So I'm doing it on 20-second bursts on low power. It's almost done. Maybe one more burst. It's really easy to burn chocolate, so you don't want to go full power for very long, if at all. Partly out of a desire for it to look like the original, and mostly / partly out of a desire to just wrap this up as I'm tired. I want to see if I can fashion a piping bag setup where I can pipe multiple streams simultaneously so that they're parallel. And I can just do like one pass across each row and there's all the stripes. So the idea is like, can this become basically like my pastry tip? I'm gonna poke some holes. Ideally I get to 5, so I'm gonna do 1 in the middle. What I think I wanna do is place some tape over this because I don't want it to like immediately start spilling out. This is slightly ridiculous. The biggest disaster would be if the cup part fell out. Oh my gosh. Ah! And by a little bit of chocolate, I mean basically all of it. Really, I guess the test is if gravity is going to do it for me. And I guess the answer is it's not. I need more chocolate, is what I'm realizing.
You also are doing huge waves. They barely move. It's almost like a straight line on the zebra cake.
Oh my God, you guys, what am I supposed to do here?
Just do a straight line.
That's what a straight line looks like.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
that
good.
looks good.
No, because there's not, I'm piping them individually, I've just decided. I'm abandoning this plan. Oh man. You know, you think things are gonna be easier. I'm gonna remelt all this chocolate together, so if I can salvage all of it so I don't waste it. This is actually really good chocolate. I'm scraping all of the test chocolate off back into the bowl. I'm gonna get the chocolate out of the bag, back into the bowl, just get everything melted again. Now I'm going straight, one pastry tip, one stream. I'm just gonna do a couple different stripes. I'm just trying to maneuver so that I have some pressure built up. I'm gonna do a practice line. Minus the part where it broke. I feel good about that. I'm gonna start on this row and I'm gonna just go continuously.
You're gonna get the sides.
Ah! I'm not making any promises. A little nervous, it all comes down to this. So now I'm just gonna go back in each one. Oh no. The line thickness is pretty good,
Some of them got the sides, but
but I feel like that's kind of like this.
touche.
Huh?
Touche.
I think they look really pretty similar.
There we go. I'm done.
Biggest difference is the color.
Yeah, and the size a little bit. Here are my finished zebra cakes. Overall, I'm really happy. I got a little nervous with the lines, but they turned out pretty well. So now I have to let them set, particularly just the chocolate. The fondant actually is pretty dry, so I'm feeling really good about that. The chocolate needs to just harden a little bit. We'll come back and it'll be time to taste. Yay. Very happy about that. The chocolate is set. I was excited like 1 second ago, but then I got tired again. Ooh. Chocolate is set. I'm gonna get them onto a plate. This part actually is kind of tricky. You can see that the glaze has sort of like set around the rack. So try to lift it off without it cracking or like losing any part of the glaze. This is so unnaturally white because like the plate is kind of like slightly off-white and mine are yellower than the plate and theirs are so much whiter than the plate. It's kind of crazy. I'm actually really proud of these. That poured technique is not as easy as it looks.
The enrobement.
Yeah, it's just can be so messy and like can get out of hand. They're a little smaller than the original. Obviously these are homemade, but they look so appealing and I think that they capture the essence of the original zebra cakes, and I'm very excited to eat one. I'm gonna not grab one off the plate. I'm gonna grab one from here. Okay.
But you also gotta taste the old one to see.
No, I'm not taking a taste of the other one. So here is my homemade zebra cake. It's a tiny bit tacky. Like it's not coming off of my fingers, but if I were to like hold it in my hands for a while, I think it would. It needs a little longer to dry, frankly. The bottom has a coating, but like it did get a little bit, it did pick up the impression of the rack. But like the bottom of theirs isn't really perfectly smooth either. So I feel okay about that. I don't know where my measurement got off. I really thought I measured them and measured the sides. I don't know what happened. But I think the stripes turned out pretty well. The stripes have, I think, the look of the kind of factory stripes. Not exactly, but close enough. I think the layers are the exact same height on both. Okay. One, they're a little cold. One thing I forgot to think about is that buttercream is going to be more solid when it's cold. If I were to let them hang out at room temp, the buttercream would be soft like the cream filling. They are very sweet, I have to say. The fondant is basically all sugar. Really uniform crumb, pretty tight. I think very similar looking to the original. Nice, even layers. cake, filling cake, very tender. Not tender in the way that the original are, but this cake has like bounce, it's supple, so I'm very happy with this. The chocolate is so important because it is the only non-super sweet item here. So it does help to cut through some of that fondant. But very, very pleasant. And also good vanilla flavor. This challenge tested my stamina a little bit. I got very tired. I really wanted to quit basically halfway through. Not because I couldn't do it, I was just like, oh, it's so many steps. I did think it was gonna be easy, but the fondant kind of gets you. Obviously, I'm glad I stuck with it because I'm very proud of the end result. If you have special requests of subjects for us to tackle, let us know in the comments. For anyone that like loved zebra cakes, totally respect everyone's childhood memories and their preferences, but homemade version, pretty into it. Now I'm rambling because I'm so tired. Let's wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.